Good afternoon, everybody. And welcome to the last afternoon of the Energy Show. My name is Joe Durkan. I'm the head of department of the technical department in the National Retrofit Directorate in SEAI. And the role of our team really is about developing the technical standards that can underpin the deployment of the renovation targets that we have to meet. But a big part of it, and what we're going to talk about today, is the implementation of the Energy Performance in Buildings Directive. Now, anyone who lives in a house, basically, it might be familiar with the Energy Performance in Buildings Directive in its most common guise, which is the Building Energy Rating. And the Energy Performance in Buildings Directive was first implemented in Ireland in 2006, and it's concerned with the energy usage in our buildings. And in Ireland, in the last Energy in Ireland report, the built environment, so that's the commercial, public sector and the domestic sector, accounted for 42% of our energy usage. So it's a significant energy user. In terms of emissions, it's second just behind transport in terms of energy-related emissions. So it's a significant portion of our energy consumption and our emissions. And so it's one of the key areas that we can work on to deliver savings in both energy consumption and energy efficiency. Now, in its current guise, the Energy Performance in Buildings Directive feeds its way into the building regulations, so the minimum energy performance standards and emission standards required to get planning permission all stem from the Energy Performance in Buildings Directive. More commonly, before you sell a house or rent a building or sell a building, you need a building energy rating certificate. And also, in order to commence building a new build, you need to do a rating as well. And as I say, this is going to change. So later on, my colleague Georgina is going to take you through the new EPBD. But more and more over the years, the building energy rating itself has taken on a kind of different approach as well. So now it's become the cornerstone of our grant programs. You need to achieve certain BER standards in order to be eligible for a grant payment. We use it as a metric to determine the relative improvement in your property from where you started. And we're starting to see that in the banks and in the financial sector, they're giving more favourable loans to homes that already have a higher energy rating, better energy rating. And so this is going to grow more and more. And in one of our programs, so next up will be my colleague Stephen, who's going to take you through the one-stop shop. And a major tool in the one-stop shop is this thing called a home energy assessment. But at its heart is the building energy rating. And this is a way by which we can help homeowners assess where they are at the moment with their property and identify the pathways that they need to take to get an energy improvement. And as we move on, and Georgina will go into it in a lot more detail, we're going to be moving towards near zero energy buildings or zero energy buildings. And that's coming down the line very fast, and it will affect how we do our business. So I won't detain you much longer. I'm just going to hand over to Stephen Farrell now to talk about the home energy assessment. Thank you.
Hey folks, I just set a timer here because I don't want the time to ramble on. Thanks, Georgina, Joe, for the opportunity to go through the assessment. I think it dovetails nicely into the work you're doing, and when you cover the four areas in terms of decarbonisation, renovation, finance and modernisation, I think looking at the whole renovation side and then moving into the renovation passport area, I think we've kind of started the stepping stone towards moving to where it should go to. And we've done about 1,000 HEAs, home energy assessments, through the one-stop programme at the minute. And I suppose we've a year's work done, we've a lot of learnings and ways we can kind of share. So it kind of dovetails nicely there. In terms of what we set it up for was one of the main principles of the one-stop shop is to give homeowners information on how to proceed. So it was a comprehensive report where they would have the knowledge to make a decision going forward. We wanted to simplify it in terms of having homeowners speak and understanding at the start and the relevant technical detail at the back. It would give the homeowner the knowledge to make a decision. We found that homeowners didn't have that knowledge, whether to make that jump and spend that 30, 40, 50K. And we have a good comprehensive document with necessary technical information and homeowner understanding dialogue that can go ahead and make that decision. It also kind of gives them an idea in terms of how much they're going to, I suppose, what way they want to go, and a bit of a reality check in terms of the cost of the retrofit. For example, people might think, oh, I didn't know it was going to come to 40, 50K to do the work. So that could direct them down the Better Energy Homes route as opposed to the one-stop shop service, the whole house solution. It's obviously the first step in the retrofit journey, and there's a number of stakeholders involved in terms of the one-stop shop. You have the BR assessor and the technical assessor. You have the one-stop shop themselves who are delivering the service as a whole, and you have the homeowner, of course. So in terms of the way we wanted to structure it, standardization was key. We didn't want BR assessors and heat pump technical assessors out there approaching our HEA differently than they would a technical assessment on the Better Energy Homes for assessing a heat pump. So we found standardization was key, and it encouraged transferability across the sector. So if one-stop shop was looking at a home energy assessment, they would understand the detail no matter who did it. It was understood throughout the industry. The reports were automated, so we have dwelling reports that go into the home energy assessment. We have heat pump technical assessment reports, and they were understood. We focused on the whole presentation of the home energy assessment in terms of it couldn't be all technical speak because you'd lose the homeowner straight away. Like, the emphasis on the home energy assessment is the homeowner gets a good idea of where they stand, and you can lose them very quick if you start going into the whole technical data end. So we encouraged the one-stop shops to put the general homeowner text at the start, and the back of the annex side was the technical assessment side. We kind of had gone through a learning curve as well in terms of when home energy assessments were being delivered to homeowners, that it was communicated in the right way, and they were presenting options to the homeowners in terms of a B2 option and a cost associated with that, and an A1 option. We found when this wasn't communicated, I suppose clearly, homeowners were left thinking they had to spend, let's say, 60K in an upgrade, whereas if they went with a double glazed solution and the solution was talked out a bit more, it could be 15, 16K less. So that was another little learning that we took when homeowners went out, and it was the whole communication and managing the homeowners' expectations. And all this is recorded in a document where they can go away and think about it and have the necessary information there to get other expert advice if needs be. What should be included in a HEA report? So each one of them are different depending on what one-stop shop delivers it. We had a scenario where we had 7 fairly brief bullet points outlining what should be recorded in a home energy assessment. We felt that wasn't enough. We were getting so many varying standards, from glorified Excel sheets to really good PDFs that homeowners would pay €500-600 for. So we had to try and standardize it. So we developed a sample home energy assessment guide, which is on the website there. You'll see the link at the bottom. And we were encouraging the one-stop shops to use it as a selling tool. So if the HEA was marketed in the right way, it can give the homeowner the confidence that this is an outfit that knows what they're doing, and there's an element of professionalism there. So in terms of the content of the HEA, it's branded obviously uniquely by the one-stop shop. It notes the current performance of the dwelling, the homeowner's key goals and objectives. So it's important to get an understanding of what the homeowner wants, and within that you'll get an idea of the budget available. An energy renovation pathway. Okay, so if the homeowner is going from an E-rated house to an A-rated house over a particular period of time, they know where they have to stop to hit that B2 mark, which would be considered cost optimal. And that sort of stepped approach might suit their journey and their budget. Terms and conditions and next steps, and the cost estimate, which is hugely important. Now, the HEA is a report done, say, by a one-stop shop or a BR assessor. It's not an intrusive assessment of the plumbing in the house or the electrics in the house, so it's an estimate. So we want the HEA to be an indicator to the homeowner that it's going to cost 60 to 70K, not 65,142. It's not a quote, it's an estimate. That needs to be explained to the homeowner. And then on the annexes, we're slotting in our technical data. So that encourages transferability. The industry are used to these standard documents, the advisory reports. the pre and post works dwelling report that has all the meters squared and the requirements to price a job, encouraging 3 quotes and so forth, and then the known heat pump technical assessment as well. That's the link there if someone wants to find the good practice guide. And it's nearly a testing bed for this energy renovation passport to see what the team might want to incorporate into the long-term energy renovation passport, or something that hasn't worked. We can't go down that route. I just have a few slides here on what the sample HEA looks like. So basic information for the homeowner, keeping it simple. Branding, okay, this is the one-stop shop will have their own unique branding, picture of the house, homeowner details. This is all notional. Current home energy performance, homeowners understanding speak. You're talking to them at the start of the job. They've high energy bills. They want to improve the comfort of their own old home. They're operating off an oil boiler. They want to do their bit, improve the situation of the home. The current BR rating was a D2. They've a gauge in terms of the national average is a C3. We're trying to get people up to a B2, and the heat loss indicator is 3.51. The homeowners, the objective then is that they have their own personal story in terms of they want to make the house warmer and cozier and healthier and so forth. That's noted. Then the BER assessment is complete. So this is the third part of the HEA. So it clearly outlines where the homeowner is in a kind of a graphical sense. So the homeowner can get a good understanding of where they're at. A current position is a D2. If they look at their fabric, replace their windows, their walls, their attic, upgrade their heating system, they're moving towards the B1 mark. So immediately they're getting a sense of what they need to do and so forth. And if they decide to add solar panels on, it'll go up to an A, and I'll show you that in the next slide here. So that's the pathway there. So that's an energy renovation pathway that the homeowner will have. So they'll see they're currently a D2. If they address all the fabric right up to the external doors, that'll bring them to a C2. Then if they address the air tightness and put in demand control ventilation, C1. And if they want to go all the way to the A3, the solar PV is the option. So it's really giving the homeowner the information to make the decision. They might decide to do all that in one go, and we have the one-stop shop support in relation to that. They might decide to do that over a 5-6 year period, depending on their budget. At least they have a pathway there, all the way from their current position to their A3, and they can plan accordingly. It kind of sets it out realistically. If they want to go about it, this is how they can do it. As part of the HEA, then, we do kind of a light technical design to give them an idea of the U-value requirement. So this is very handy if they're going out for different quotes in terms of, I got to be our assessment done on energy pathway. It's coming in at a B1. So that was based on the attic being brought up 300 mil, 1.14, based on us getting double glazed windows 1.2, the air tightness and so forth. So we don't expect a full technical design in terms of people going into each room by room, doing the heat loss calculations and so forth, but it's based on the one-stop shop's knowledge in terms of it's a light design and it's indicative. After the HEA, we always expect that the heat pump specialist has to go into the house and do an extra check in the hot press or the pipe work. Electrician would have to come in and do their assessment on the condition of the wiring and so forth. So when they have all that done, it moves from the estimate, which is the HEA is, and then the one-stop shop can move to that quote, which is a more accurate figure. And then for completeness, there's a technical note there in terms of the standards that they're applying their evaluation to. So that's just kind of a light technical design to give other one-stop shops an idea of what way it was assessed. In terms of next steps then, it's just a little guiding note on the next steps taken forward. Once you have your HEA, 9 times out of 10, a homeowner could be thinking about it over a 3 to 4 to 6 month period. They can contact them again and so forth, and kind of, if they're looking for a more accurate assessment and they want to go away with the works, then the next part of the project delivery comes into play. And I suppose this is the key point at the end of it, and this is kind of where it makes or break the whole assessment. The homeowner is given a quote based on the works that they're suggesting. So in this instance here, there was 9 measures upgraded in the house, or planned to be upgraded in the house, and the estimate is 68,000. Now, from the learnings that we've had and what the HEA is about, I think what one-stop shops should be thinking of is providing a range. So it's going to be in the range, say, of 65 to 70K, to move away from this notion that it's a quote. An estimate is something to do the works, subject to the trades coming in to make those final assessments. Now, as you can see on the right-hand side there, the homeowner can clearly see the grant amounts associated with each measure. And that comes to 31,000. And then they have, say, 2,400 linked to the energy credits and so forth. So the homeowners to find, or their budget that they have to find is just over 34K. So it gives the homeowner a good idea of what they're getting done and how much money they'll have to find to upgrade the house to that B2 mark. And then it also gives them the option, if they want to go to the A1 or the A2, they can add 4 kilowatts PV onto the system. And that'll bring it up. So it just outlines a financial plan and gives them a rough estimate of where they need to go, and so forth. So that's just a brief kind of overview on where we're at in terms of the HEA, how the one-stop shops deliver it. It's really just an estimate to give the homeowners a kind of a document in hand where they can make a decision on. And a lot of the time it's a reality check in terms of they think they're going to get it for like 20, 30K less, but at least they kind of can start moving forward and plan ahead over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think hopefully it'll dovetail nicely into the whole renovation passport kind of approach. And like we've a lot of learnings, like we've about 1,000 or 1,100 of them done. And we're getting mixed feedback and such, so there's a lot of kind of ways we can improve it, but I think a big part of it was standardization, using the standardized documents that we've there, because the different standards of HEAs that were being provided by the one-stop shops, especially at the start, varied. Hence we had the good practice guide document. So that's really it, folks. Regina. You want to do questions at the end, Joe, is it?
Thanks, Stephen. That was really interesting, and definitely, I think it's a great tool for homeowners to have, because where do you start? And I mean, sometimes, like, we're all in the energy world, and this is a business-to-business show, and sometimes you kind of forget that, like, other people do other things, and they don't know where to start, and they don't want to know, and they shouldn't need to know, and this is a brilliant tool to help them. This is my flicker, is it? Okay, brilliant. So my name is Georgina Malloy. I'm a chartered engineer. I'm the program manager for EPBD Concerted Action and Implementation. So I'll explain what all of those things are in a few minutes. I've been working as an engineer for over 20 years, and I've worked in design consultancy, contracting, and most recently now for SEAI. So I've seen the industry and the market from a number of different perspectives, and I live in a house that needs to be retrofitted, so I know it from the homeowner perspective as well. So the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, just by show of hands, does anybody know what it, has anyone heard of it, or anyone? Okay, yeah, brilliant, a few people. So even if you haven't heard of that, you probably know it because it informs our legislation and our building regulations. So we'll talk about what it'll mean for our business, your business, and the sector in general. So just to give you an overview of what I'll talk about for the next 20 minutes or so, I'll give you a history of the EPBD, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, and concerted action, which is what I work on. I'll talk about the current status of the directive, where we are at the moment, and this will feed into what Stephen is doing. I'll give an overview of the revisions that we expect, because the directive is being revised this year. I'll talk about what it might mean for our business, your business, and the sector, and then we'll have some time for discussion afterwards. So the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive is an EU directive, and it was first published in 2002. And the aim was to improve the energy performance of the European building stock. And because it's an EU directive, it needs to be transposed into Irish law, and that informs the building regulations. And most applicable to us is Part L, conservation of fuel and energy, and Part F, ventilation. And then all the other European member states transpose it into their laws and their building regulations. So when it was first published in 2002, as Joe and Stephen said, we saw the introduction of building energy ratings. In Europe, they call it energy performance certificates. And with the building energy rating came the requirement to have an advisory report. And Stephen's home energy assessment is an expanded version of the advisory report. So the directive was revised in 2010 and 2018, and in 2018 we saw the requirement for new buildings to be nearly zero energy buildings. So many of you have been designing and maybe living in nearly zero energy buildings since before 2018. So what is that? It's a building that has a very high energy performance, so it requires a very low amount of energy. And the energy that it does require needs to be covered from a very significant extent from energy from renewable sources. In 2018, we also saw a mandate for major renovations. So a major renovation, and this is what one-stop shops are doing, a major renovation is when you are renovating more than 25% of your building fabric or your building facade. And when your renovation is designated a major renovation, there are certain requirements that you need to comply with, and they are in the building regulations. So for a home, generally you'd be required to get your home to a B2 or a cost optimal equivalent, and that's what the one-stop shops are doing. So in 2018, SEAI did major revisions to the advisory report part of the BER. So it was to promote renovation and to, not everybody who gets BER is thinking renovation. You know, they might be selling, they might be renting, but the idea is that you get your BER for whatever reason, and you also get an advisory report, and the idea is that might trigger your thoughts of renovation, obviously at the moment, to reduce your bills. So the advisory report outlines how you might get your building to a B2. So that's the front page of a sample advisory report, much like the HEA, but the HEA is much more, the home energy assessment is much more detailed. The advisory report, everyone gets this who gets a BER, whether they're thinking of renovation or not. So it itemizes their roofs, walls, windows, floors, space heating, water heating, and renewables. And it says how they are at the moment in your home in terms of energy performance and what they would need to be to get you to a B2. So this example here is an F, and if you improved all of these measures, you could get your home to being a B2. The second page itemizes in more detail how you would do that, so advising on U values, giving a general idea of cost, and then telling you what grants are available for each measure. And the third page gives a bit more detail on that. So the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive really mandated countries to develop their building energy rating program. So currently we have nearly 750 domestic BER assessors registered, and we have 210 non-domestic BER assessors. There's a strong demand at the moment for BER assessor training, and we've 4 training companies registered. So last year, over 134,000 BERs were added to the public register, and that's the largest amount ever added in a year. So some of that was probably overspilled from COVID and lack of activity, but a lot of it was due to renovation and grant works. So that was an increase on 50% on the previous year. 30% of BERs last year were associated with retrofit works, and we expect that a large amount are going to be linked to grant works. So what's the current status of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive at the moment? Well, we expect a revision in June of this year. And the aim of the revision really is to increase increase renovation rates and decarbonisation of buildings across Europe. So the ultimate aim is that Europe will have decarbonised building stock by 2050, which is a massive ask, and that's why we need to increase renovation rates. So the mandates that we'll get in June are going to be implemented over the next number of years to achieve these targets. So why? What's the motivation for the revision now? Well, taking a couple of stats from the European Commission website, and often European legislation is quite dense and hard to read, but the European Commission website is quite a handy one to read, and they do summarise it very easily. And if you Google EPBD and European Commission, you'll get quite nice and easy to read information. So they say that buildings in Europe account for 40% of energy consumed. Buildings account for 36% of energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. 75% of EU buildings are not energy efficient, and up to 95% of EU buildings will still be standing by 2050. So this just highlights the need to renovate. So how does that compare to Irish statistics? Well, we're up there on the average. In Ireland, buildings account for 42% of energy consumed. So we're at the average and we're above it. And across Europe, 1% of the building stock is being renovated every year. So if we're going to get to decarbonisation by 2050, we need to ramp this up. And this is what one-stop shops and all of the grants are hoping to achieve. So at the start, I talked about concerted action, and I'm the programme manager for EPBD Concerted Action. What is that? It's an EU-funded project which aims to improve the energy performance of buildings through collaboration, exchange of knowledge, exchange of experience between countries around Europe. It's a joint venture between all of the European countries and the European Commission. And from the very start, Ireland and SEAI have been involved in exchanging knowledge, best practice, and experience on how to implement the directives and how to transpose them best into the laws and the building regulations so that they're workable and so that they achieve what we need to achieve. So of the 27 EU member states, 8 countries have a management role at concerted action, and Ireland are one of the 8. So we set the agenda, we decide what topics will be discussed, and we decide, we facilitate the sharing of the information. So I'm the central team leader for the Irish management team. So what do we expect in the revision? So we expect the introduction of building renovation passports. I don't know if anyone's heard of the concept of a building renovation passport. No. It'll be much like the home energy assessment, and when this gets transposed, we will work for them to become one and the same, I suppose. So a building renovation passport is a tool to plot and manage the renovation of the building. So very like the home energy assessments. But it will set out a pathway to get your building from what it is today to being a zero emissions building. So Stephen talked about getting a building to B1. This will set out how to get your building to being a zero emissions building, and I'll explain what that is in a few moments. So initially it'll be voluntary for homeowners. There'll be no obligation to get one of these passports, but it'll be mandatory for countries to provide the facility to get one. So if a homeowner or a building owner wants one, SEAI or the authority will provide the facility to get that. And I mean, the beauty of it is that the passport will move with the building. So if I sell my building to you and you buy the building, you look at the passport and you'll see, okay, Georgina and her team carried out step 1 and 2, and now step 3 is for me. That might be solar on the roof. And the idea is that it's set out in a logical way so that what you do as the previous, or what I did as the previous owner, doesn't mess up what I want to do in step 3, and that I don't have to do any reworks, so that the path is a logical path, and it'll be beneficial in that building data will be kept and will move with the building. We expect the introduction of a digital building logbook. So this will be a common repository where energy performance building data will be kept. So the BER, the renovation passport, maybe the smart readiness indicator is kept in one place, much like the BER database, and access to data across Europe is becoming very valuable. So I spoke a few moments ago about the building energy or the building renovation passport, explaining how you might get your building to being a zero emissions building. So what's that? A zero emissions building is a building that has a very high energy performance, that requires a very low amount of energy, and the energy that it does require should come from renewable sources generated on-site or nearby. So on-site might be the rooftop, and nearby might be a district heating scheme or a community energy, renewable energy community. Also, there should be no on-site fossil fuels from a zero emissions building. So that's a distinction between a nearly zero energy building and a zero emissions building. In the next revision, we expect the harmonisation of the BER scale. So on the left, you can see the scale as we have it in Ireland today. So A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, etc. And on the right, you can see the proposed scale across Europe. So the new harmonised scale would be a scale from A to G, A being a zero emissions building, and G being the worst performing 15% of buildings in the country. So the idea is that the scale would be common across Europe, would be more in line with the labelling of appliances, and it's a way to track how countries are getting their worst performing buildings out of the G rating and up the scale. So A would be zero emissions building, G would be the worst, and then an even bandwidth of energy performance from B to F. We expect the introduction of minimum energy performance standards. So these will be gradually introduced in the next 4 years or so, and it's a trigger to renovate the worst performing buildings across Europe. So it's to increase the renovation rate. So the worst performing buildings, say in the G category, would be expected to move up the scale to an F, and so on, eventually getting to a decarbonised building stock. We'll see the introduction of the calculation of life cycle global warming potential in the next number of years. So that's an indicator that quantifies the global warming potential contribution of a building in its full life cycle. So embodied carbon in the materials, embodied carbon in the renewables, and a requirement to calculate the global warming potential will be there, and it should be disclosed in the building energy rating or the energy performance certificate. So there'll be a significant amount of work to be done to develop this calculation, and SEAI will be involved in that. So sitting alongside the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, the EU Commission published the EU Solar Energy Strategy, and this was a direct response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the need for Europe to get away from Russian gas and fossil fuels in general. So it's set out in three parts, and the part that most applicable to the EPBD is number 1 there, the European Solar Rooftops Initiative. So it's the idea that Europe wants to take full advantage of the rooftops we have and generate as much renewables from the rooftops as possible. They've identified, obviously, the skills shortage. So this is not just an Irish problem. I mean, we have a massive skills shortage, and any stand will probably talk about it as you walk around. A shortage in terms of professionals to design the buildings. So every country in Europe is having the same thing. So they've developed a partnership to see how we can do that, and they're motivated to get the manufacture of renewables back to Europe, which will reduce. I mean, it makes most sense to manufacture your renewables as close to where you're using them as possible. So the PV Industry Alliance is trying to do that. So what might it mean for the business, for our businesses and for the sector? Well, it's likely to drive the demand for renewables and renovations, which will in turn put pressure on supply chains. So skilled workforce, skilled professionals, supply chain of materials that have low embodied carbon, supply chain of renewables that are manufactured as close to the country you're using them in as possible, preferably Europe than anywhere else, and demand for finance and funding. Yeah, I mean, look, we need the finance to do all of this work, and grants help and are a major part of that, but people need finance to add to that. So look, what can we do? The revision is expected mid-year. So I would say follow us on LinkedIn and the other social media platforms, follow our website, and the Department of Housing will be transposing these directives into Irish law and the building regulations. So do watch their press releases as well, and keep in contact with your bodies like Engineers Ireland, the Royal Institute of Architects of Ireland, for press releases and more information. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the Energy Show. It's great to have you here, so thanks for listening. Do we have any questions for any of us? Nope. Do we have a mic? Thanks. Nearly off the hook. I could see you were waiting there to put up your hand. Like, I'll make her think she's off the hook. And I hope it's for Stephen.
I guess maybe for both of you to a degree, with BR certs and all that, it's great. I just wondering, is there any thought of actual building data, so IoT devices and stuff like that, which are becoming much more economical these days, and that a BER cert might actually be supported by actual data gained from over a medium long term of a building to maybe go with its passport and stuff like that. So I've seen it previously in buildings where it might be certified maybe as a B2, but it could be performing in reality maybe more like a C1 because of different factors that are going on. So I just wonder, is that a consideration over time to have actual building data to go along with it?
Yeah, and you're talking about monitored energy, as opposed to the way we do the BR at the moment. I mean, the EPBD, we haven't seen the recast yet, so we can't say exactly what's going to be in it, but the proposal we've seen at the moment talks about the fact that countries may use monitored data, and they use the word shall and may. So shall in the directive means you have to do this. May means countries have the option to do this. So at the current proposal we see, they use the word may, so that means countries may. The likes of Estonia use monitored data across the board, so their energy performance certificates are solely based on monitored data. Other countries to a lesser extent. So look, I don't know, maybe Joe can comment on that as well, but at the moment we don't. You see, the difference is the BER is based on regulated loads, so that's like space heating, water, lighting, cooling. And when you monitor, you're monitoring appliances and cooking and all of that as well. So it's not as easy to compare because your monitored data includes all of that, your laptops and your appliances. But yeah, look, it is in the directive as a may. So watch this space, and working with Europe, obviously we're discussing how they're doing that. But yeah, it is. Do you want them to add on that?
No, you said right. The BERs itself, as you know, is an asset rating. I suppose when you go into the whole monitoring side of it, then you're kind of delving down certain areas where how are these instruments calibrated and so forth. So it's we'll have to just wait and see what way it comes out. But really, I suppose what we can do is try and work on the defaults and things like that, which we're currently doing. But in terms of the way you're thinking of going, it would move away from the whole asset rating approach, and so forth. So we'll have to just wait and see what comes out from the next revision. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, the asset rating thing, like the BER was designed as an asset rating. So for example, if there was two houses on the street for sale and they were the same house, and I was trying to decide which house to buy by looking at the BER, at the moment, I could compare them because they're based on assumptions of space heating, water heating, cooling, and lighting. Whereas if we were to monitor those two houses, a huge family that was quite heavy on, that was there all day and using lots of energy, the BER would be different to the identical house next door that's not there all day and don't use as much energy. And then it would be difficult for me as a buyer to compare those houses because they're the same house, the same asset, but they're being used differently at the moment. So it would take away that ability to compare like with like.
So it's a discussion to be had, you know. But on the flip side of that, obviously, monitor data is real data. Yeah. So, yeah. Yes. Do we have a mic?
A real life question. How long do you anticipate that an appreciable portion houses, dwellings will have been dealt with? My own experience, I'm afraid, has been disastrous. Won't bore you with the details, but that's why I'm very curious. You see, all the things that you have outlined, brilliant, wonderful, but how will they actually get working? Will people be able to afford it? I mean, you may talk about grants, but there's a road to be gone, there's a matching sum and all of that. I just wonder, has any real life evaluation been attempted in terms of cash needed, time needed, and the awful disruption to families? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a number of strands. The cash in terms of the low-cost finance initiative that's going to be put forward. And I suppose we're in an environment where we're struggling with inflation and external factors in terms of COVID-19, the aftermath of that, and then the energy crisis and so forth. So there's that low-cost finance that we're hoping to see possibly coming in during the year. Then I suppose a key factor that you never mentioned was supply chain. We have to provide confidence in the market so the supply chain can grow organically. And in doing that, we have kind of policy documents and legislation and full government support in terms of that support is going to be there between now and 2030. That'll give the supply chain the confidence to expand and grow and so forth. So you're getting people thinking about retrofit. I'm going to direct my company into retrofit. Then we have a number of retrofit providers increasing. In terms of removing the complexity from the whole retrofit process, and I know you kind of said, you alluded to there that it can be stressful and so forth. We have the whole one-stop shop service in place, and it's based on the whole principle of removing that whole complexity from the homeowner, and it's managed through one party. Now, we're currently battling with and I suppose it's a good thing, there's a huge demand of people looking to avail of the one-stop shop service and make that jump in one step, bring that house up to a B2 and so forth. So we currently have a number of one-stop shops on the system. By the summer, we aim to have another 6 or 7 in place. So that supply chain is growing, and it'll take that whole pressure and time, I suppose that waiting list and that waiting time that people have to wait on and they feel like they're not getting a service delivered to them within an acceptable time, that'll reduce as well. So it's something that we won't be able to solve overnight. We're hoping though as the years progress and more people move into the sector, that the stresses will reduce. Like there's other initiatives in terms of, we all know there needs to be more apprenticeships, tradespeople out there. Like does the government have an initiative to increase the number of apprenticeships? Say there's 10,000 apprenticeships coming through per annum by the middle of the decade. That will take a lot of pressure off the system as well in terms of getting tradesmen into the market. But we're also kind of dealing in situations where unemployment rate is at 4% at the minute. So that means people aren't sitting at home and people aren't getting them to do work for them. They have to go into other companies and try and take them away from the company they're in. So there's a lot of factors there, but the big thing is provide security to the market in terms of there's going to be government support there. We have to make inroads in terms of the housing stock. There's an ambitious target there of 500,000. There's a commitment there of 8 billion to get that work done. And we need the supply chain to understand that, recognise it and direct our business towards it. But it's not going to happen overnight. But it needs to scale exponentially and so forth. I don't know if it answered your question. Like it's going to be a long-term solution that will have to improve year on year.
Thank you all for your questions. I know we have to move on to the next speaker now. So thanks for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks.
Lovely.
Oh, and tradeswomen.
That's it, yes. Sorry, tradeswomen. Guilty.
50% of the population are not in construction, so we need to get that right.